Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Modest Musings. Today is May 10th of 2018, and today's topic is going to be about unconscious learning. Now, I cannot take credit for the entirety of today's topic. It's a topic that I've been thinking about a good bit. I've read some books on it, including Mind Gym, as well as most recently, The Mental Game of Poker, which is a good book I recommend. And I don't play poker at all. I don't play any poker, but it's a very, very good read, especially if you're a player or just trying to compete at anything in life. Helps you, I think, understand a lot more about your mental fortitude and what kind of goes into your mental stress in different situations. But very much just like a sports psychology book. But let's talk a little bit about how exactly people manage those kind of situations. So, first of all, I should say that there are ways that people will learn things. Usually, let's say a build order. Build order is a really good example. If I'm learning a new build order, I am consciously thinking about each one of the next steps. The very first time, let's say like the top level, is that I have a build order on like another monitor, on a notepad or something, or, post-it note, and I have to look at it and do each step of the build order. That is the most conscious learning possible, right? It's going to be very distracting. I'm not going to be thinking about anything else during that time. That's why I might make a lot more mistakes when something unexpected happens. I'm going to have a really hard time adapting. The next step is that I don't need the post-it note anymore. I know the build order, but I'm still consciously thinking like, okay, and after this, I have to plant down the pylon. After this, I have to plant down this cybernetics core or something like that. So that's like the next level that comes in. But I'm still consciously thinking about it. It's still things where I'm telling myself this is the next thing. And I'm sure anyone that's actually played enough of a build that it just happens. Even just openings, very bare basic openings. I know I've been playing StarCraft for StarCraft 2 alone for something like 7 years. I know how to do pylon gateway, cybernetics core, etc., all that good stuff. I know how to do a gateway expansion into a Nexus Nexus and all that stuff. I don't have to think about any of that. I'm not consciously thinking, okay, and next step is the pylon, next step is the gateway. It's sort of just muscle memory to an extent. And you'll notice this a lot in pro players if you watch their streams. A lot of the time, they will be doing things like tabbing out and, just kind of like they'll be talking and they'll be reading a lot of chat during that time, especially the ones that really like to engage. A lot of streamers like to engage during those first couple of minutes because they don't even have to think about what they're doing in the opening. And that is unconscious learning. And it's very important to realize, and this is just a big kind of example for what unconscious or conscious learning all the way to unconscious learning looks like in one clear example. But this can happen with a lot of things, with splitting Marines. It can happen with speech patterns as well. There's so many different ways that this will end up applying. And the value of unconscious learning is that you can only think about a certain number of things at any given moment, right? I can't think about, or it's going to be difficult for me to think about this. I have to plant down my Nexus and then my next pylon and then a Twilight Council next. And I have that in my head and I have to remember to chrono boost it like these times. If then also I'm trying to micro a stalker at my opponent's front door and do stutter step micro back versus Marines or something, that becomes very difficult because now I have too many things that are taking up my consciousness in how I'm trying to play this out. So whereas if you have all of that build order stuff unconsciously, I can focus my full attention, my conscious attention on that stalker and out positioning the Marines and making sure I don't get flanked or something weird happening. I can look at my opponent's build. This is actually a very core concept also in a lot of fighting games. Is kind of tangentially related, where in fighting games, there's always this thing that people say, don't look at your character, look at your opponent's character. And it's kind of tangentially related because it's not a fully the greatest example of this, but a lot of the reason why they say that is because you should be able to unconsciously move your character the way you want them to. You shouldn't be focused on verifying that your character is moving the way that you just tried to move it. Instead, you should be looking at their character and your consciousness is focused on what are they doing and how do I react to it. So you're able to devote your thinking power toward what are they doing and trying to pick up on patterns and things like that. And same thing with StarCraft, where you want to be looking at their stuff and thinking, okay, consciously, what type of build are they going for? And what's the high level thing that I want to do to react? Or what's at a high level, what do I want to do to try and punish this or adapt to whatever they're doing? So I think that this is a kind of like mentality that is really important for people to be able to employ in their day-to-day lives as well. Just being able to do unconscious learning, I think or just the concept of unconscious learning has helped me figure out how I learn a lot and has helped me out a lot in casting as well. I don't want to have to think about, and this is actually something funny. You'll sometimes hear a lot of commentators mess up the intros, and they'll kind of go into autopilot mode. I think almost every commentator has like an autopilot mode a lot of the time for intros after they've done it, for a year or something. And I actually use most of that time to just gather my thoughts about each one of the players. And I kind of think, okay, this is, Jon Snow. He's an incredibly consistent player. And I'm like talking like, in the bottom right-hand corner of the map, spawning goes right. I have all of that on autopilot, but I'm actually consciously thinking, okay, Jon Snow, he's a consistent player. He hasn't gotten the massive result, but he's consistently risen slowly over time. He's facing off versus Neeb, who had a huge meteoric rise in the scene. Okay, that's the story, all right? It's going to be this guy who had a huge meteoric rise versus a guy who's very gradually come up in the scene. Okay, cool, let's do this. Like, I'm thinking consciously about something completely different, and that's only possible because I have so much muscle memory built up. And I think this goes back to the value of practice as well. This is what practice can concretely deliver for someone. And the cool thing is you'll notice that this is about a soft skill. Commentating is a soft skill. It's hard to judge and identify and say, this is always a good thing in casting. Like, that's a really difficult thing to ever really feel like you pulled off because so much of it is so arbitrary and whether something is good or bad. So having these things where you can devote more resources to other things because you've built up this muscle memory of something that you like about the commentary, that's a really, really useful talent. Or not talent. It's not a talent at all. It's just a really useful outcome of practice. And man, let me tell you, sometimes with soft skills, it can be frustrating as hell to identify skills that you've developed that you can't just be like, well, someone else could just say the exact same thing that I did, and what have I been working at casting for 7 years or whatever. It can feel very difficult a lot of the time to come up with concrete things that you feel like you're doing well, and these are one of the clear benefits that you can say, this is because I've practiced this to this point. That is muscle memory, and I don't have to consciously think about it, so I can devote my attention and resources to identifying specific small things that are going on in their build orders or identifying overarching stories and that kind of stuff. So anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed that kind of talk. Not exactly as clearly directed as some of my other ones, but I think it's a very interesting topic and something I've been thinking about a lot for the past couple of months. So anyways, have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your weekend, guys. And I will be casting WCS Challenger this coming Saturday and Sunday. Europe on Saturday, NA on Sunday. It's going to be the playoffs, so I'm really looking forward to this. The match that I'm looking forward to the most, the two matches, are probably Showtime versus Euthermal. Oh, that's going to be so good. And another Protoss versus Terran, Puck versus Semper. Oh my God, those guys have never had, I don't think they've ever in their entire lives had a series against each other that was not the most dope series ever. They play amazingly fun games every single time. So I'm looking forward to that one especially. But yeah, guys, thanks so much for tuning in and happy StarCrafting.